Hey, everybody, and welcome to Comedians of Technology, People, and Drugs. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have comedian Alan Jay Byrne on the podcast. Hey, Alan, it's really great to have you with us. Thanks so much for sharing your time.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm very happy to be here, Sam. In your capable hands.
Oh, yes, those big hands we've been talking about. Yes, and it's an exciting new dawn. I'm trying out is it side tone? I can hear my own voice in one ear. I can see the multicolored neon lights in the background of your setup there. It's feels like we've finally arrived in show business, but you're a very, very, very funny person, Alan, and I'm excited to talk to you. Let's leap into our first question, which the listeners demand that we ask is what is your comedy origin story? Did a comedian, radioactive comedian, bite you at some point? How did you get into comedy?
Well, I think I've probably been bitten by quite a few comedians, but that didn't give me any of their powers, thank God. Um, yeah, so I think when I was almost a bit of a funny person, if I'd be so immodest to say so, growing up, and then I had a friend who was a stand-up comedian in Ireland called Gillian Fitz, very
Oh
funny
yeah.
woman. We did a short-lived podcast together during the pandemic that was actually really fun. Fits and Starts, whatever is remnants of it, is still available on all the podcast nonsense.
Ah.
Um, and yeah, she was just like, "Oh, Alan, you should do stand-up comedy. I do it, you could do it." And then that sort of inspired me to do it.
Wow.
And I lived in. We can kind of go into some of the other stuff maybe later, but I lived abroad for quite some time. I lived in China, I lived in Saudi Arabia, I lived in the
Mm.
Arctic for a bit. And then I come back to the UK. I was going to try and do primary school teaching because I'd done teaching abroad a little bit.
Mhm.
And I came back and I was like, and then after a few months, I was like, this is a terrible decision. What was I thinking? Children. And then I was like, what am I going to do? And then eventually I found another job. But in the meantime, I did a comedy course and started doing stand-up comedy. And I haven't really stopped since. But sort of also was inspired to go in that direction because of my friend Gillian Fitz.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, that's amazing. Well, so much to dig into there. Well, Gillian, fantastic. Fits and starts. We'll check out that podcast. The comedy course. We speak to many comedians. Some of them did comedy courses, some of them didn't. I'm one that did. Which was the comedy course that you did?
Okay, this is the thing. This is the question I get a lot, and I'm embarrassed to say I cannot remember the name of the person.
Oh
Right?
dear.
There was this, listen. I've had these conversations where they're like, "Oh, it must be that person." I'm like, "No, it's definitely not them. Not them." It was this geezer. It was this old school geezer, big geezer, and he was in the Ale House pub in Deptford, and he was running this comedy course, and it was me, and sort of slightly unusually, demographically speaking, it was all women on the course and me for
Oh
whatever sort
wow.
of course of events. And yeah, he was great. He was a really he used to play lots of the kind of jongler club, jonglers, the
Yes,
sort of
sure.
working
Yeah.
men's pub kind of club kind of vibe. So he was a real old school geezer, but he had great, really great like fundamentals about comedy.
Mm.
And I wish I could give him a shout out, but I'm terrible because I can't remember his name because
Oh
my
no.
memory
Well,
so
I think
I've
that.
gone through my emails trying to find his name, trying to find, and I can't. And then, of course, I talked to one of my friends, who's my best friend, Chanel Marshall. She doesn't do comedy anymore, but she did for a long time. Met
Right.
her on the course, and I was like, "What's his name?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know either. I forgot."
Oh wow, wow, wow. Well, or I mean, it's the unknown comic. Maybe he doesn't exist. Maybe there was a special person that the universe formed in order to,
That's
give the gift of comedy to a number of you, and now has dispersed. But the person you describe reminds me of somebody whose name is escaping me. But there's a very famous comic who runs comedy courses now up the creek. And is now off
mm,
touring and has become a bit of a big TikTok star who's also like you and I follically challenged. But
aerodynamic, aerodynamic.
aerodynamic, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, but guy, I can see his face, but I cannot remember his name. But maybe it's an
This is
exciting.
this. Welcome to another episode of Bald Guys trying to remember comedian names.
Indeed, I mean, it's what the audience demands. It's what the audience demands. I think the aerodynamicism of our palates, that's the wrong word. Our ball pates, allow us to reach the parts that other comedians can't reach. Yeah, and so the comedy course. Yeah, that was like, I guess the standard format of like 6 weekends or whatever and showcase.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was that kind of thing, and it was good. And initially, you sort of raw, and you still, you're okay, but you're still not doing stuff good. But I think if I might get deeper, Sam, if you don't
Oh,
mind me going deeper, do you mind if I go
please,
deeper?
please, I insist.
Yeah, well, I think without going into anything that's not funny, but I think I'm also quite interested in like therapy and all this kind of stuff.
Mm,
But I think when I was a child, I had a sort of my the attachment style I had. My parents were a little bit, I wouldn't say they were absent, they were present, but they weren't exactly very present in other ways. So
okay.
they I think when looking at this sort of my own psychology, lots of the time if you have sort of parents who are a bit hard to please in some way, you end up trying to sort of please them and trying to be funny around them. Now, this is a very and it's called what's it called? I think it's called avoidant attachment or something like that. I'm sure that's incorrect. Some psychologists now will be going mad listening to that. But it's oftentimes the case with alcoholics. Now, my parents weren't alcoholics, but they ticked a load of the other boxes of sort of being a bit like disinterested. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. There's no chance they're going to listen to this. But and then because of that, you sort of become funny because being funny is a way of kind of like getting people to getting positive reinforcement, and it's also a way of kind of smoothing out like awkwardness or smoothing out like tension in family dynamics and stuff like that. So
Mm,
honestly, now I'm into more therapy. I think although I've sort of given you the more standard answer, I think it probably does go back to childhood and kind of like making things okay with my brothers, with other people in my family by being funny.
right, right. Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, uh, on, as I may have referred to already, Pete Holmes' podcast, he talks a lot about how his parents were, like, loved him and it was good. And I think he had generally, compared to some people, a great upbringing, but there was arguments, there was tension, and he definitely fell into a role of, oh, I can, make things okay by making people laugh. And that was the role that he set in the family. And you're describing something
Quite
similar.
similar, quite similar. Now, obviously, Pete hasn't quite had the career that I've had, but
Well,
he's
well,
doing
yeah,
very
we
well.
we can't
He's
all
doing very
have your career, Alan. It
well.
would be manifestly unfair. Manifestly unfair. Yeah, and so I mean, you started out at the beginning saying you were funny growing up, and by was that yeah. So I guess you put that down partly to the family situation. Was that always? I mean, was it also that? Even with that becoming an outlet for your funniness, there was maybe a sort of a twinkle to begin with. You enjoyed humor, you enjoyed
Oh,
making people laugh
absolutely.
to
Yeah,
start with. Yeah.
absolutely. And it was sort of a way, it's funny, there's sort of when you're growing up, I think you're sort of trying to find out how to get along with people. And if you're a bit of a if you're not as good at some of the standard stuff, so I was very unsporty when I was a kid. Grew up in the countryside in Ireland. Everyone's into GAA and football and soccer and all this kind of stuff.
Right,
I
right.
was a bit more arty kids, but there was a few of them, but there weren't as many of them. And also because I have my parents are English. Well, sort of English. My father's Irish, but he grew up in England, and my mother's actually English, but she's got a Scottish grandmother and all this stuff. But I
Okay.
grew up in Ireland, so I sort of had an English accent as well. And again, it's not a big deal, but it still puts you a little bit on the outside of things
Uh,
growing up and stuff. So it's interesting. You like, I think when you're trying to find a way to interact with people, and for me, comedy was a way that I could kind of get on with everybody because I
mm,
remember I have this very distinct memory now. I haven't thought of this in years actually, but
mm,
when I was 12 years old, and there was not a bully. I mean, it was a very nice school, but there was sort of a bit of a guy who was a bit rough, and for whatever reason, something happened one day when I sort of annoyed him, and he said, what the fuck are you gonna do about it or something? He said, just we were only like 12 years old,
yes,
you know
yes,
what I mean?
yes, yes.
But and I don't know. I just did like an impression of him. I was like, I don't know, boy, I'm not sure. And people laughed, and he laughed, and he
Right.
laughed, and then he was like, "Oh, you're all right." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is it. This is the thing that will not get me out of jams, but allow me to interact with people who I don't necessarily have an in with." But if I can be
Yes.
the funny guy, and yeah, and then I really, yeah, as I went then into secondary school, I think I kind of went more into that role of being quite funny, and that was a good way of kind of smoothing out some of those edges.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating. I think it's a common story. I end up feeling. I wish I had a similar story in that. So I was bullied at school, and I totally failed to use comedy to deflect that. You
You're
know,
just bombing. You're just bombing. Just
yeah, it was just. I mean, well, this is the thing that I was. And I was talking about this last week with Matt Lowe's. Is
Mm,
I was kind of the geeky, academic-y kid.
mm.
And that, so my whole thing was I was busy trying to do my best work for the teachers and so
Right.
on. And I was just also like a bit kind of gormless, if I'm honest. Like I didn't
Gormless
really
is a great word.
understand comedy or how to make people laugh. And I think I sort of now I look back in an embarrassed fashion, like, oh right, I could have been using comedy. Like if only there'd been
Right.
like
Yeah.
if only there'd been some sort of comedy course where I would have learned about this. I mean, apparently Jimmy Carr wants to teach people in schools about how to do these things. With a
I think it would
yes,
something like that would be great. I don't know if Jimmy Carr is the man for the job,
well,
but
quite.
I do think it's a good idea.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, yeah. Yes. So you had that growing up, so you were deploying those comedy skills at school, in at home, and yeah. So you tell me more about Gillian. You were in like she was just a friend. You were doing a podcast. You were somehow involved in the arts in some fashion
Um,
coming out of school.
so that was when I was doing the thing with Gillian. I've always had a kind of an arty bent. Like when I was growing up, we used to do. In fairness, one thing that my mother was great at. She was really into sort of not like art, high art, but make and do sort of art attack stuff. I just wanted. Did you ever see the Art Attack? Do you remember
No,
Art
no,
Attack?
I don't know it. Tell me
Oh,
more.
it was a big show in the. I guess it must have been maybe late 80s, 90s. Anyway, it's a really good show. It's all about make and do stuff. And I just watched a documentary about how it came to be actually the other day. That was
Yes,
quite
yes.
interesting. But yeah, so I was always into that. And then I did English and philosophy in university for a bit, which is why I'm living the lavish lifestyle you see here today. In my one bed in Croydon with my luminous lights behind me. But yeah, so I always had a sort of, I was always doing a bit of pieces, and then I did a little bit of music for a while, had a little band for a while, and then I sort of put that to one side when I went traveling, and then when I came back, I think the travel and the like learning different languages and different cultures kind of filled the artistic void or some sort. There was something about that that was also creative and interesting. So I did very little in the artistic realm, really, for a while. I wrote a few short stories and things, and then when I came back to Ireland, I was living there for a while, and I don't know, I needed something again that was a bit more creative or challenging or something
Sure.
because I was back in an environment that was relatively easy to navigate.
Mm,
So yeah, and then I kind of got back into it, and then I met Gillian through my brother. She was originally a friend of my brother's, yeah.
okay.
And
Right.
then
And so, I mean, you mentioned the podcast. You were also involved in helping her with the podcast, or have I
oh
got?
well, it was she was doing the comedy thing, and then it's just like it's just the classic story of lockdown when we're just like, oh God, this is we're just going mad here. Let's just we talk to each other anyway. Let's record this,
Got
and maybe
you.
other people will
Okay.
think it's funny. And about 7 or 8 people really did.
Brilliant. And if I can get that many people laughing at my gigs, I
Oh,
think
that's a
I'm like
success.
success. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, right. And so yeah. So at this point with Gillian, that was you were chatting. You was like, oh, let's do a thing. You weren't thinking particularly. I'm looking for a career in comedy. You were just thinking this will
No,
be a laugh.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that is sort of um I think that is sort of my attitude towards comedy in general, really, because I don't I don't massively care about being successful. Other than I care, I want to get better at this craft because I
Yes.
love
Yes.
doing it,
Yeah.
and it's so much fun. And when it works, and when you can really bring a room of people together
Mm,
laughing,
mm.
it's such a lovely, it's such a beautiful feeling. So I do really want to get better at it, but at the same, but you see some comedians who are successful, and you're like, these people suck. And you see
Mm.
some people, you know yourself, Sam, running the gig. You see some people, you're like, who's this person? Where are they been hiding? They're
Right, right,
amazing.
right, right.
They're just, in the back of a pub. So it's not a direct, of course, there is some correlation,
Yeah.
but it's not as important. And I don't really care about money or, oh, because I'm so good. I'm so spiritual. And everyone cares about money. Of course, I care about money. But you know
Right.
what I mean? It's not the main motivator for the comedy. Yeah.
No, it's like they say, money can't buy you happiness, but it can put your kids through university.
Yes.
Is a little line that I've come up with recently, but yeah, well, there's so much exciting stuff to get into. I've been having a lot of feelings about success, wanting to get better recently.
Mm,
I think it seems likely that, well, I guess that being completely driven and like caring so heavily about success can be a thing that destroys you. It
mm,
can be a thing that also takes you all the way to success.
absolutely.
It's I guess I'm sort of trying to play a little, part of my ego is trying to play a little game with saying, okay, if I stop wanting it really badly, maybe I will get it. And that's
Right. Yes. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sort
The
of
classic.
bargaining thing. I think I love what you're saying there about how, I mean, the feeling of making people laugh is a beautiful one. And I don't think it needs to be a 50,000 seater arena to
No.
get the amazing feeling. I think if you've got a small room and that room is full and the majority of people in it are laughing, it's just that there's an absolutely lovely feeling. And I think I want to get, I think as we all do. Who wants to get worse at comedy? We all want to get better at
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah. You haven't met them yet. No. No. Yeah.
There was there was it's not, I forgot his name now. There's an American comedian. They made a movie about him that gosh, my this is going to be a lot of like bald people trying to remember names. Good Lord, Jim Carrey played him in the movie. He was in
Oh,
Taxi.
Andy Kaufman.
Andy
It was
Kaufman,
the Man on the Moon, I
yeah,
believe.
Man on the Moon, and it was strange because he had this really off the wall brand of comedy, which seemed to
Mm.
involve like just having people hate him for long periods before they
Yes.
would. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's, but that's a tangent.
Yeah, no, but that is a good example of something that is sort of it's not getting worse at comedy, but he was kind of moving almost into sort of anti-comedy or sort
Right.
of avant-garde stuff. I mean, some
Yeah.
of it's hilariously funny. Some of the stuff you're just thinking, this is interesting, not necessarily funny, but it's kind of becoming a different thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
a great
yeah.
example.
I mean, whatever he was doing, he was going in some direction towards his truth. And I mean, I guess at some point in the journey towards your own truth, you may discover that you don't care anymore whether it's funny or not because the truth is more important than
Right.
who knows. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think I definitely want to get better. I also want to be. I don't want my attachment to the outcome to get in the
Mm,
way of the enjoyment of the process. And I think not just
true.
getting better at comedy, I want to get better at filling rooms. And I think that's one of the interesting things is that you can be fantastic at comedy, but if you haven't managed to get yourself into a situation where you have a full room, you are lacking the instrument through which comedy can be realized, right?
That's an instrument. That's a great way of saying it. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's very good.
Which is not to say that I've seen some masterful comedians take very small scattered rooms and produce wonderful things out of them. So there's a lot down to that skill. But it's these days with so many people wanting to perform and relatively fewer people actually wanting to like observe to be the audience. There's this whole thing of like how do you get a selection of people who are up for comedy into a room, and those places, these sort of churches, these cathedrals that we have of Up the Creek and Top Secret and the Comedy Store and so on, that they've worked this magic, with
Yeah.
the selection of comics and the history and the this that, and the other and the design of the rooms to create an environment about like we will give you a beautiful environment, but
Yeah.
then there's gatekeepers all around them to the likes of you and
Sure.
I
Sure.
find it challenging to get it. It's a yeah, it's a funny old world. Yeah. So
The group thing though as well is interesting because it is group dynamics are so interesting I think in comedy because it's like as you know yourself I don't know what the number is but for me
mm,
I think it's something this is me trying to be as if this is remotely scientific but I think it's something like 12 people that's my number I have in my head I
oh
think
really?
less than 12 people or maybe less than 10 it's quite hard to get the room going because there's
Sure.
something about a group of people and again, you can have a room full of 30 people who don't want to laugh. I mean, that can
Absolutely.
happen.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But once you get to a certain size, it just things start working in a different way. And I think it's something to do with um so two separate dynamics. So like, when people like walk, okay, so I work on a river cruise at the moment. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place.
No, no,
Fucking
go
someone
for it.
trying
Go.
to
We
work
love
out
it.
the
We love it. Tell us.
timeline
Tell us.
now
Tell us.
would
Tell
be
us all.
like,
Tell us everything.
what the fuck is this guy up to? But where the wobbly bridge,
Yeah. By the Tate
the
Modern.
one right, the Tate Modern, yeah. It's the wobbly bridge because when they opened it up, it
Yep.
was so wobbly, people were falling down, breaking hips,
Oh
vomiting over
dear.
the side. And apparently this is because when people walk, they tend to fall into a marching motion where
Right.
you follow the pace of the person behind you. So
Yes.
the theory is, if they were all walking randomly, the bridge would have been fine. But when you have large groups of people going across, they tend to walk in lockstep, which means you get a consistent bump, bump, bump across the
Yes.
bridge, which
Yes.
wobbles it. And I think that happens with rooms. People fall into a kind of a group vibe. And then if the group's going one day, they come along with them. And then the other
Mm,
side of it for me is it's like it's also a permission thing too. So like people, if you've one person who finds it funny enough to laugh, even if it's a bit edgier,
mm,
then that will give permission for the other people to laugh.
yeah, yeah,
But and so you almost need a couple of sort of people planted around the room
yeah,
that will laugh at something that's a bit maybe a bit too much for some other people, and then once they see the other people laugh and they're like, oh, that's okay, and then
yes.
you get enough of those in a certain number of people and the whole thing kind of just opens up, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's definitely something to that. And although I was at a party last night, and it's interesting. There is an element you can say it's not stand up, but for example, you can have in a party. Let's say that you're in a group and there's like five or six people, including you. Um,
Mm,
you can potentially be doing something that is not completely alien from stand up as
mm.
part of for like that. You can get into a rhythm and they can be laughing. I mean, it's a little bit antisocial to be doing it for too long, right? I mean, the whole point of the party
That's
is,
a great
you know,
point. Yeah.
you can end up there riffing, and I was sort of doing it a little bit last night, and then thinking, oh no, I should stop.
All
I should
done
stop.
it. We've all done it. Where we're like all of a sudden we're like, oh no, I'm doing a show here. I
Yeah,
better
yeah.
back up.
But there absolutely is something about when you can get people into that rhythm, and that rhythm. I mean, the interesting thing about whether it's 10 or 12, whatever, I think it also affects on the room. Like I think hypothetically, you could have five or six people, and if they were in the right sort of space, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the
Yeah, that's
the endless Sudoku of trying to make comedy work. But yeah, so just to come back to your origin story then. So you were having fun doing the podcast with Gillian, and she was doing stand-up. She said, well, you should try it. And so was the you took her advice and you signed up for the comedy course. Was that the precise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was her advice or her saying basically again, sort of a permission thing. She's saying, "Hey, you're just as funny. You can do this. If I can do this, you can do this." And that's not a knock on her, that's a compliment as opposed to you could read it in reverse. And then that was combined with me just at that moment when I'd given up on doing the teaching thing and thinking, Jesus, I've come to England to do this. What am I going to do now?
Right.
And again, eventually I found a job. I was working in the London Dungeon for a bit,
Oh yeah.
of course. And um, and a few other things came along, but at that moment, I just had nothing. And then sort of she had said the thing, and we've been doing the podcast, and she was like, "Just go do some comedy." So it was the support of somebody who was in the doing comedy already, giving me permission, combined with the sort of aimless, "What the fuck am I going to do now?" feeling. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I'm interested in the comedy course, like that process of doing it. I mean, was it, I can see how you got to that place that you wanted to do the comedy course. But you chose a comedy course rather than just going and finding an open mic. You felt like,
Yes,
oh,
I
I
did.
should start
Yes.
with something, and
Yeah.
then just tell us what you remember about the process of the comedy course and how it led you up to presumably the showcase gig, which would have been your first gig.
Yes. Well, again, my memory is terrible, so it's specifics. I don't I don't remember a lot of specifics, but I do remember the general feeling, which was that I just again I think I still needed more permission or more kind of like more confirmation that yes, I can do this. I don't know quite really know why, because people are like, oh, Alan, why are you funny? Why wouldn't you think you could? But I needed a bit
Mm,
more of that, and then
sure.
also I kind of am I'm I wouldn't say I'm a technique guy, but you know theory and stuff like that is I think it's always worth having a look at, and it's always worth listening to other people.
Yeah,
Like I've done quite a few
sure.
courses over the years. You
Mm,
don't
mm.
necessarily agree with everything or take everything away, but I almost think it's worth doing something like that, even if you decide you totally disagree with all of it, because
Right.
for me it still gives me some kind of a base or a structure to start off with, and
Sure.
I am glad I did it that way, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And then so um the the and you don't remember the details is absolutely fine. And I think that's all good. I'm just interested in the first few gigs, as in
Yeah.
what you were saying there is you wanted some more structure. I mean, at the party I was at last night, a friend of a friend was asking me about stand up and was, oh, how do you do it? Like, oh, aren't you embarrassed in this situation or whatever? I think a lot of people are intrigued by stand up and about
Yeah.
like how they, because I think for some people it's so far away from what they
Yeah.
ever want. And actually, I think for some people it's like it's the most embarrassing thing that
Oh,
they
it's a
can think of.
nightmare.
Right, it's an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely.
And so, was there something that helped you? I mean, I think the courses are generally great in terms of allowing you to give you a series of sort of low stakes environments into which to practice some material, and then a sort of a friendly showcase gig. But do you remember the showcase gig or some early gigs, and about
Yes.
what how you got the courage to get up there and do it?
Well, I can remember I was very nervous, and I'm one of these type of people who is, I like being, uh, I'm a bit better now at improvising on my feet and stuff like that. But
Mm,
I am one of these kind of guys. Not everyone is this, but that is very into crafting. So like, if you've seen my act a few times, you'll notice that a lot of my delivery is the same. My body language is the same.
oh yeah,
Now that can get too rigid. That can become restricting as well. But for
yeah,
me, if I have something verbatim wrote that I know inside out,
oh
then
yeah,
that allows me to be more present because
got you.
I'm not trying to think about what comes next. So I kind of
Mm,
over practice. And again, I think that can be a weakness. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but I
hmm
would just remember I was stood in the little back area of the shitty little bar where we're doing the showcase.
mm,
And, everyone else was just sat down in the audience. I was just going through my set like again and again and again and again, which by the way, it's not a great idea, but
mm,
that's the zone I was in at the time.
sure.
And then when I went up, of course, I was really high energy and I was probably talking too fast, which I still do. I'm doing it right now. But I was flying through stuff. So obviously, looking back, like all of us on our first gig, I'm sure we'd be sort of horrified. But but I remember just getting through it and it going quite well, all
Yes.
things considered. And we had a relatively diverse group of people from ages and races and stuff there, which was also nice because it was like, okay, yeah, this is funny for a few different people. This isn't just funny for whatever.
Great.
People who are of my own, demographic or whatnot. And it was, yeah, and it was a good feeling. And I think, oh shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, it was so insightful, Sam. Oh, you'd have been rocked. You would have been
Look,
rocked with how insightful it was.
we can
But I,
record something. We can get something in post
yeah,
and put
I'll
that.
pop it, pop it
We'll,
in
we'll
post.
yeah,
Just some quotes, just some sort of, some Socratic quote. But no, I think, I know I don't. It's again, it's hard to remember. When you look back, when you access a memory, you change it every time you access it,
sure,
as they say.
sure,
But I think for me, it was a part of the negative side of being a sort of comedian-y pat, we try to make everything okay with comedy is
right.
you do have a lot of anxiety about people not liking you, right?
Okay.
And so for me, that's a big, fear. I think it's a subconscious fear, mostly speaking, for me
Yes.
now.
Yes.
But I was like, this is a good way to work through this feeling,
Sure.
because you're on stage and you're very vulnerable and sometimes people aren't going to like you. And for me, this is actually a really important part of why I like doing comedy because it's becoming more comfortable with that feeling of being like, hey, it's okay. Not everybody has to like you,
Right.
in your life as well on stage, sure. But and it was a good way of kind of, getting to grips with that.
Yeah.
And, and also I think it scared the shit out of me, but I have a sort of a policy that I try to stick to, that if something really is scary, that I should try and go towards it because generally speaking, there's knowledge there or there's something to be gained, even if you never do it again. It
Yeah.
was great. There was a couple of the girls, most of the people on the course, except for my friend Chanel, we went on and did gigs together for ages, before she sort of packed it in.
Yeah.
And the others, for them, they were just like, oh, I really just wanted to do this just to kind of show that I could to myself. And now
Yeah.
I'm totally happy never doing it again. And I
Right.
fully understood that. I wasn't one of those people. Of course, part of me was like, oh no, bringers. I would have had so many bringers. But part of me really respected that too, because for them, it was just that was just kind of a single thing they wanted to kind of get over or get
Absolutely.
past to prove themselves. Whereas for me, it was an ongoing thing. Like,
Yeah.
and it still is. I have to keep getting up there to remind myself that sometimes people like you, sometimes people don't. That's okay. And the people who do like you, that's worth risking the rejection. Not because, oh, you need to be liked and all that, but because it's a beautiful thing making people laugh. That
Yes.
that part is still pure, regardless of one's own insecurities or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. So much in there. I mean, that go towards scary. I think Eddie Izzard has said the same thing, and I think it's a brilliant point. I mean, he was like, not just spikes, but like
Yeah,
generally
yeah,
like the things that you might survive. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. A lot of people talk about. like Stuart Goldsmith talks on his podcast, comedian podcast. He talks about wanting people to like him,
Mm.
and I wonder for me because I almost
Mm.
feel like, at least if I think about it rationally, I don't really care if the people in the audience like me as long as they're laughing. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe they
Interesting.
need to like me if they are laughing, and it is. I mean, it is a lovely. I mean, again, you're making the same wonderful points about how beautiful it is to make people laugh. I find that moment when you're there and that people, everybody, and everybody's hopefully everybody, the majority of people, one person is laughing in the room, and then there's for me there's afterwards, if people come up and say, "Oh, I really like that," or "I like that joke," or what have you, that's that feels wonderful. And then
Okay. Yeah.
also watching it back later and reliving it, and there's just a whole series of like wonderful things there. And I think for me, I don't think the anxiety is about whether people like me or not. And I'm not saying there's no judgment there. I'm just
No,
sort
no,
of,
no. I understand. I
yeah,
understand. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
analyzing it. I think part of and this is danger for everyone is that the good feelings are so good, and then we want them again so much, and that
Mm.
wanting can get in the way of actually getting them.
Yeah.
And then like I mean I've sort of a sort of regular gig that I've been doing recently, and it tends to it's every 2 weeks, and
Mm.
I've absolutely smashed it there some weeks, and then it seems to be kind of like an on off, you know,
Right.
and I then go to the next one thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to have another one of those amazing ones, and then it's
Mhm.
just not awful, but not it hasn't reached the
Yeah.
highs of the previous one,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of like, and I can almost feel that when I'm on stage in the beginning of it, like if I haven't got it off to a great, a really high tempo start, part of me, yeah, it's a funny psychological thing that we're doing, isn't it?
And do you think with that pattern of sometimes it goes well, sometimes it just goes badly, or not badly, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're wonderful, I'm wonderful, everyone's wonderful.
We're all wonderful. Yay, love
Yeah.
us.
But do you feel like that is, of course, sometimes that's just the room. Listen,
Sure,
of course, rule of thumb, you should never blame the audience. But we've also all been in rooms where like this is an unplayable room. This is
sure,
nobody
sure.
likes this. Nobody's here for this. And I have
Yes.
plenty of those stories if you want to hear.
Uh,
But do you think that inconsistency is more down to you, or do you attribute it more just to the random happenstance of the night?
I
Like,
think
why
I put it
can't you just get up there and blast it? You know what I mean? Every night.
indeed, and I think that the audience is definitely a factor, and it's like if the room is in the right state, it is so much easier to get started. But I think that the where I tend to lean in my head is if I can't, if the room is that little bit quieter, it's about that I haven't yet got the skill to unlock the bigger laughs
Yeah.
because I have seen um, you know, some comedians, some of them like really accomplished, others, haven't been going for quite so long, but that they have, that they've been in a room where three or four comedians in a row have got a relatively tepid response
Yeah.
from the room, and then these people have come along with, and is it the quality of their material or it's the quality of their crowd work with which they engage with the audience, but
Yeah.
they unlock something. So and I think, yeah, like the audience absolutely, um, uh, is a huge factor. I think it's a little bit, what's the word? You're not it's an easy out, and everybody needs to like manage because the feeling in the same way that the feelings after a great gig are so amazing, the feelings
Yeah.
after an average gig or as I said, a bad gig are awful in the same way that
Certainly.
the good ones are fantastic. That's part of the nature of comedy. And so if that's what you need, no, I don't mean you personally, but if
Yeah.
what one needs to cope with those feelings is to say, well, that was on the audience that time, then by all means, my hypothesis is that I could be better, right? And so
That's
rather
a
than
more useful
saying,
way of thinking about it, I think. Yeah.
Mm.
Whether it's
Yeah,
true or not, that's where you've got the growth is that, you know what I mean?
yeah. Because I think when I look at this is a gig last Thursday, and the the room had not got quite into it. The MC hadn't done quite as much crowd work as in some other nights there. When I look back at my set now, I think I should have maybe done more crowd work at the start, and then also I should have committed more heavily to the thing that I was working on. I mean, I'm also really interested in what you're saying about sort of memorizing things verbatim, and certainly I was doing that at the start, and I think for something I say over and over again, is about like the being on the stage and being in the moment is it's intimidating, right? And you will forget things, and it's just so
Yes.
there are of the many ways, at least two. One way to be more comfortable in that uncomfortable position is to know your material backwards and forwards so that you can almost just do it without thinking about it. So that's one thing. Another one is to be absolutely in a headspace of like, I do not give a fuck. I don't care if it goes well or badly or what have you. And then it's all good. And I'm in this phase at the moment of I do almost completely different things every time.
Right.
And so in this, and it's now, I think I've done like six of them for this Thursday that I'm talking about. I've
Mm.
I've done a completely different set each time. And part of me is trying to get myself in that space where I can eh, just not care. The problem is I do care, and that
Yeah.
yeah, we wrangle, we go on wrangling. Yeah, and I also talk too fast, but I'm also trying. I'm trying to a lot of the things that because this is a funny thing. Like you're saying, like you might want to not talk too fast, and people say, "Oh, don't talk so fast." The I find that, like managing it psychologically, being on the stage, almost if I'm trying to be something other than what I am, then that kills me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you no, I think that's exactly right because I there's there's some correlate there's some coordinates here I feel like between yeah there's technical stuff space pacing there's crowd work being in the room but I think a lot of it somehow does come down to an authenticity thing and I
Right.
think now the thing I don't like about this is it ends up feeling a bit woo woo and there's no
Mm,
parameters to measure
mm.
but I do think that the audience can kind of feel when you're not comfortable. They can feel when you're
Mm.
kind of hiding stuff. They can
Mm-hmm.
feel now,
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you're stumbling and mumbling, they're going to feel that. But it's beyond that. You can be really pristine and you can be really confident and not give a fuck. But if the audience just feels like, ah, there's something, this
Yeah.
person, they're not quite here. They're not quite
Yeah.
here with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be here with them in terms of like, oh, my dad used to beat me, and here's my horrible deep inner.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a truth in terms of like a personal truth, but I think they really have to feel like you're there with them, and you're not trying to get one over on them, and you're not hiding stuff. I just did the Amanda Baker writing course recently. I don't know if
Oh
you've
yeah.
heard of that. It's an angel, and she's an American comedian, director person. She's great. She's an
Uh-huh.
absolute fucking lunatic, but she's great. Like, you guys are fucking shit. Get your what the fuck is this for a punchline? If you're sensitive, do not do this
Okay.
fucking course, right? But if you're not, she's got great stuff to say. And one thing that she said to me, which I'm still trying to work out exactly what this
Yeah.
means, but I have I have a very I have an inclination that she's definitely right. Is she was like, Alan, your stuff is good, but I still feel like you're hiding. I feel like you're hiding yourself a bit from the audience, and the audience can feel that. And I was like, hiding what? And she was like, oh, I don't know. That's your problem. You got to work that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I was
Interesting.
like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting? And I think it is true, but I'm still not quite sure. I'm still kind of now that's in my head. I'm trying to play around with that. And it's not just talking about stuff that's
Hmm.
more or less personal. It's sort of almost more I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. If I did, I'd be a better comedian.
Well, we're all on the journey. I'm I'm running this up my flagpole and I'm saluting it, sir. This is I think you're there does because there's
I'm great
definitely
at talking about it. It's just doing it's the fucking problem.
well, like so many things. I mean, like enlightenment and understanding the nature of the universe. Like I'm starting to feel like conceptually I've got it. I've got it in theory. The practice is another matter. We'll maybe come on to that later. But yeah, no, I think. agree with you wholeheartedly about this. If the audience senses that you are, whether it's not there, not present, not comfortable. If you are uncomfortable, you can get into a feedback loop of uncomfortableness with the audience. You feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable looking at you, it makes you more uncomfortable. So there's something about you being completely relaxed. And there's somebody about a completely relaxed person through whatever mechanism that they've used to achieve that state of relaxation, a person on stage who's completely relaxed. And it's partly because almost like in that situation, when you're being looked at by a room full of people, you should not feel relaxed. And a bit like,
Yes. We're evolutionary designed to be like, oh no, everyone in the tribe's looking at me. I've just done something fucking wrong. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, evolutionary love. It's and I think in the same way that I mean, often there are comedians. I think Sarah Millican, for example, is a good example, who she comes across looking one way, and then the things that she says are, she breaks the stereotype of what people might be thinking. And I think that's for at the the base level, even before you've got what you look like, that like we say, yeah, you should be uncomfortable in this position where everybody's looking at you and you're standing there with a microphone. If you are relaxed, that is a weird thing that people are intrigued by and they want to, yeah. So it's all about getting into that comfort
And
zone.
I think as well that just coming back to like audiences and how they respond and the sort of, what comedy is about or whatever. And I do think that like, and this is the thing that really, it did help me. It has helped me. I'm still not as relaxed on stage as I like to be, but it has helped
Uh,
me. Is that like, I think most people, all of us included, we have anxieties about things. We feel like people are judging us. We're worried about what
mm,
people think. Again,
mm, mm.
this is part of what being a human is. We'd like to get away from it, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to go too far away from it because then you become, fucking a
Sociopath.
serial killer or whatever. Um, but um, but I think the comedian, one of the things that people like about comedy, you hit the nail right on the head, is they have anxieties in their life that they or and social anxiety that they wish they didn't have. When
Yes.
they see somebody else who seemingly doesn't in that way, I feel like they're like, yeah, yeah, it gives and then when they laugh about stuff, they're like, yeah, they sort of go in, they do that sort of thing where they see through your eyes. And I think for a moment they also feel relaxed and they also feel like
Yeah.
fuck everybody. And it's like watching a movie, you watch a
Yes.
crime movie and you're like, yeah, I'd be a really cool crime guy. The fuck you would.
Yes.
But you
Yes.
know what I mean? But again, so then when I'm on stage, I'm like, Alan, don't forget, you like try to relax here because but when you relax, like the people, that's what they want. That's what they're here for.
Yeah.
They're here to let go of the anxieties. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, it's I'm doing a like sort of a parade past all of that. It's like, yeah, and I think
Oh, good. Two bald white guys saluting each other. This is a good one.
yeah. Well, we're about to get cancelled. Yeah, probably. It's gonna, a drone strike will take us out momentarily. It's yeah, yeah. It's but I really like what you're saying there about uh people sort of seeing themselves through your or as you or something. There's something about when you're watching a movie or a TV series or what have you, you are mentally putting yourself in the position of a character. I mean, and this is, I mean, I've just listened to a podcast where they're talking about, yeah, like, you got Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio. There is a wealth of white men movies and little hero things into which lots of white men can put themselves so easily. And that's part of why the diversity is important to allow
Mhm.
people who are not white men to see
Yes.
themselves and enjoy these things rather than feeling disenfranchised from the whole,
Yeah,
shebang.
and I think people sort of they say, oh, it's just diversity quotas and all this stuff, and I understand some of those arguments, yeah, but there really is there is quite a philosophically deep reason for doing it because people they do feel they people need that outlet to see themselves reflected, to see their own experiences reflected, and it might and that does actually have an effect. I think it does, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
on the crime on the just now I think of it I do think as well specifically sort of movies and things about criminal activities, regardless whatever the color of the people are, or anything else. I think those are attractive to people as well. So, like, because if you look at movies, right, you
Mm,
got romance, you got comedy, and then you sort of have, crimey kind of action too, sure, action and
hmm.
crimey kind of stuff. Why is crimey stuff so interesting? And I think it's connected to comedy because I think what do criminals do? They don't let the mores and the, not saying this is good, but they don't let
Hmm.
the social constraints around them stop them. They just
Right.
do, they are living the way they like to live. You know, the boss,
Yes.
they don't take shit from their boss. They don't feel anxious and worried about this or that and the other. So I think, of course, then there's the whole dark side, which
Sure.
in the good crime they show both sides,
Yeah.
stuff that just glamorizes crime. I'm not interested in that.
No.
But the stuff that has that other side is important too. But the thing I think that's appealing about criminals is not that we actually want to go around killing people and
No.
murdering them. We wouldn't actually do that. I think the thing that is attractive is that, again, like the comedy, the thing of the person who is not constrained by the anxieties that we all feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So there's a connection there in that, watching The Sopranos, we're kind of putting ourselves into, we're seeing a person, or at least some characters who are relaxed and just doing whatever. And, and then similarly, the comedian on stage is just sort of doing whatever in a way that, we are anxious and constrained in our daily lives. And it's about giving us some relief of that, which it makes a lot of sense. Coming back to your comedy journey, yeah. So you did that course, you went on and did more things, and yeah, it's just been going, and you're just basically, I mean, it sounds like you're doing like many people, like a tour guiding thing, which actually is related to comedy. You're talking to people, you can put little jokes in and so on, and then your nights are filled with stand-up comedy pretty much every night of the week. What's your rhythm in order of like how frequently you're getting up?
So it's funny. When I first started off, I was just doing one or two. Then I
Mm,
went through sort of a phase where I was doing three, four, 5 gigs a week. And then what I
mm,
found was, and again, everybody's different. People should do what works
sure.
for them. And I think people should also try out different frequencies to find out what works for them
Mm,
as well. Because you
mm,
can kind of get
mm,
in a rut that might feel like a productive rut, but that might feel productive, but it still might be good to break it up from time to time.
sure.
We all know those gig dogs who are like gigging 8 nights a week, and you're like, man, you need a holiday or something. But anyway, so what I did was I was doing a lot, and now I've cut it back down to about 2 or 3 nights a week. Maybe I'll have to, because of me just scrounging around, I might have to be a bringer on one of those nights. But then that's when those nights taken. Then it'll only be 2 gigs. It won't be three
Right.
gigs. Another one. And the reason for this for me now, people might, maybe I'll change my mind again and think I'm wrong in the future and be like, oh shit, I should be doing more work. Maybe I'm just a
Mm,
lazy
mm.
bastard. But that allows me then to have enough time off where I'm not exhausted. Because what I found
Yeah.
was I was just getting so tired out. I couldn't be funny on stage. People can't think you're funny if you're half, falling, dying, tired and
Yes.
sort of depressed.
Yes. And unless you are making that your act,
Yes,
it's
yes,
it's
unless that is, yeah,
yeah, which
which
I
you could
mean,
be, can be.
well, and there's, I mean, it was one of my comedy collaborators was commenting to me. There was one time when I hadn't slept very much, and I was on stage, and in a, and he was like, that's kind of, that could be you, and I was like, I don't want to have to sustain that character. Like, I mean,
Right, yeah, yeah, it could be, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, 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 interesting, yeah, and so. Yeah, moving on through well, actually, I also one of the it's interesting that you say, yeah, one person gave up on the comedy course. Oh well, and but you said the majority of the people who are on the course with you, they've all carried on gigging, have they?
No, no, only one of them did. Most of
Oh,
them didn't actually, which I thought was really was quite interesting. Yeah, yeah. That
yeah,
for
yeah,
them
yeah,
it was just kind of like a one and done thing. And I don't disrespect that. I think it's a great thing. If you're, I'm presumably most people listening to this will be interested in comedy in some way. But
yeah,
even if you're just somebody who's interested in comedy as a fan or whatever, I
yes.
think doing a comedy course can be a really great thing, even if you never intend to do
Right.
it beyond that final showcase. You still learn so much, or you can do.
Totally agreed. And yes, and then so I think your experience there matches exactly with mine in that the majority of people who were on my comedy course didn't carry on. And I don't know that I had the intention of carrying on, but as soon as I'd done it, I was hooked. I was addicted. And
And I,
yeah.
I don't want you to retread in case you've talked about this on the podcast before, but why did you then do that course if you weren't sort of intending necessarily to go on? What was your initial
So I
impetus?
think it was we were just coming out of COVID and my kids were getting to the age of I actually had a bit of free time at the weekends that I could, like with good conscience not be there for
Gotcha.
a Sunday afternoon. And I was also frustrated with some things at work and I was like, I want something for myself. And this was, something as I've
Yeah.
talked on previous podcasts about how, my 30-year break of stand up and then coming back to it. But yeah, so that was the particular situation there. And I mean, I remember signing up for the course and not realizing that there was a showcase. and so
Right.
it's like, and then getting the email that said, yeah, everyone fantasy,
See you tomorrow.
and there's a showcase, and I could feel my I was on an elevator that had just dropped suddenly in my stomach. Like, oh God, what have I done? Because anyway, but so yeah, so you're busy, you're gigging, you're finding the frequency, you're getting in the zone. Slipping onto our second theme. Well, it's kind of the first theme, but second question is technology. Which, and I guess like technology can be any sort of thing. I mean, different styles of thinking are technology, pencil and paper. AI is a technology. Video, it's all stuff. I mean, what I'm really interested in is your comedy process, how you're coming up with the jokes, how you're improving your performance, how you're doing that. What are your current means for getting better, and how, if at all, are what are different forms of technology involved in that?
Yes, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm first just going to go take a quick wee. Is that all right?
That
Sorry.
is that
I
is
just
absolutely
ran
fine.
straight in the door onto the Zoom. So just
That
give me one
is
second.
no. Well, I'll pause the recording and I'll do the same. Back in. Whoa, we're back. What goodness, yeah, comfort break. Yeah,
Nice.
bio break, and
Very good. Do
yes, all that. I
you
was
want me
just
to? Sorry, go.
it has been quite hot today, and uh, selfishly for listeners, you were just mentioning you didn't want to open the window because where is it you live?
So I live in West Croydon, which is, it's a colorful part of town. It's a nice part of town. There's some, I mean, I love living here, but there's a lot of police sirens and there's a lot of ambulance sirens and there's a lot of I call it the Croydon Symphony. So unfortunately, if the window was open, we would be getting most of that. So I did just have a quick air out to let some of the heat out
Yeah,
here.
absolutely, absolutely. And I guess actually, since we're doing all of these things, I guess one thing I forgot at the start was to just check your audio levels.
Oh,
If you go to the audio settings in Zoom, just want to
sure.
check that it's got automatically adjust microphone volume set
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah. Let's have a look. Audio.
So that's all sorted. Yes, let's jump back in. Yes, to the technology question and the comedy process. Yeah, how is your process and how is your technology?
Yeah, so I think when you start off, they kind of give you stuff like look at yourself, talk about how you look, talk about your problems and all that sort of stuff. And then but then, eventually you're off the comedy course, you're out in the world trying to write stuff, and you're like, how do you come up with ideas? And I think again, like lots of people, sometimes you just have a funny thought or you see something funny that makes you laugh, and then you're trying to make
Right.
that into a joke, and you're just in your lazy way, not your lazy way,
Mm.
one lazy way, hoping that that will just keep happening and you won't actually have to sit down and do any work. And it'll just, and some people, God love them, they're amazing. They can just pick stuff up and they get a lot of the material that way, or they write on stage, which I do a
Yes.
little bit of. But again, I think I'm a
Mm.
bit more. I'm not quite as loose as you are, Sam. I mean, I really admire this thing, just going out doing something different every single night. I mean, I think that's fantastic. But I'm a bit more rigid, so I don't do maybe enough of that. So then that means I don't write
Mm.
enough on stage. So I think in terms of like technology and stuff, I have a little. I record voice notes
Oh yeah.
as opposed to writing. Now it's interesting. The course I just said, they said they advised you. They actually advised me to write out some of my jokes in a kind of a stanza form, so I could get a better feel for how the structures were working and stuff like
Mm.
that. Which I do think that actually there's some great value to that. I think that's a good project. But for me, I like recording audio notes because sometimes a big part of what's funny is the delivery, it's the tone,
Right.
it's the way you say whatever word you say. And also I do find as well, maybe this is closer to writing on stage stuff. Sometimes when I'm trying to riff out whatever the idea is, I'll just come across something funny that I'll just spit it out in a way that I think I wouldn't. For me personally, some people are, writers. That's their thing. They can just,
Mm.
I can't type. I can't do the touch type and thing.
Mm-mm.
So for me, it just allows me to like blast stuff out better. So audio notes is what I do. And I just realized yesterday that I hadn't backed any of them up, and I just did that. So that's another little tip.
Yeah.
Make sure you do that. Because if you're living in London, you're not going to have your phone forever.
No, no.
And yeah, so that's the sort of main tech I do. This idea about, and then in terms of using other types of technology as well, I think like listing techniques, that's when I kind of get a bit more text based. I'll be like, okay, let's sit down here and have a look. Like I've got an idea for, so I have a joke. I can't remember if I did it at the show I was at with you the other day or not,
Mm.
Sam, but it's about Halloween and how
Mm.
Halloween is the equivalent of a neighborhood extortion racket, and you're teaching
Right.
children basically be little mafiosos. And I do a little act out without giving the joke away too much, where I basically do trick or treating as, oh, here we go, we're back to gangsterism,
Yes.
as if I'm like, oh, hey, hey, what do you got for me?
Yeah.
Oh, um, so and then so for something like that, I
Cool.
might take, and I should actually do this with this joke to try and punch up the joke a bit, but
Mm,
like list all the words associations with
right.
mafia, all the words and associations with Halloween, and then try and find the links to try and sort of augment and explain. So for me, then having a list of words that I can look at, that's helpful then. And as you were alluding to the chat GPT before we start talking,
Mm,
ChatGPT isn't good at writing jokes yet, thank
mm,
Christ. But
mm.
but it is really good at like listing words, associations, homonyms, synonyms, that
Right.
kind of stuff. Yeah. So that I find very that's useful. So those are the main things I do. My handwriting is terrible, so I've given up on trying to like handwrite stuff unless I'm really stuck, unless
Sure.
I've really don't have a phone or anything else. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the well, I was going to say I'm like a doctor. That's the one part of me that's like a doctor. I don't think there's any
Yeah,
other.
yeah. Well, excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think you're the first person maybe we've had on who uses voice notes. I've occasionally
Oh,
taken
interesting.
voice notes. What I tend to find is if I take voice notes, I then often don't um I find I want to be able to scan. And actually, I guess these days, actually, like it's just, since this is like 2 or 3 years ago when I was maybe doing more voice notes. I guess you can have your voice notes transcribed relatively easily, relatively cheaply
Yes.
now.
Um,
Is that something you're doing?
so it's not, but Sarah Conrad, who's also a very funny comedian, she was in the course with me the other day,
Mm.
and she's American, based here in London, and she there's some app, there's a Google app, I can't think of the name of it, but it's just one of the ones you can get for free or whatever. That
Yeah,
is an audio note app that then automatically transcribes everything. And what's nice about that, I'm going to start using that because that way you can do a word search or you can scan through a
yeah,
page of
yeah,
text to find that joke. But then for me, if I was like, oh, but how did I say it again? Just you got the audio there as well. So
yeah.
I wish I knew what the name of the thing was. But anyway, it's a Google note
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways of doing that. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fascinating. The voice notes and then using ChatGPT. And I think I mean the thing for me is I've got like I'm doing this like I have a big Google Docs and I will you know like as any thoughts during the day and I will note those down. I will then be I've got this like 10 jokes a day thing that I've talked about has come from Cal McKenzie from a course that he was on. So I kind of like just like 5 minutes before going to bed, I try and force myself to come up with 10 jokes, which at the moment I'm not looking back at, although maybe I should start. And my preparation for my sets at the moment involves basically scanning through stuff and trying to pick out, like 5 themes from my comedy booby trap, or maybe 10 for when I'm doing stuff at the at sunset or what have you. And I'm kind of almost putting no time into that the thing that you're doing there, like this sort of listing, the pulling out the words, the kind of, and I maybe I will need to get back to that. But there's something of, I don't know, partly I'm kind of I'm using all my spare time to admin gigs to try and make sure that we have as many people in the room as possible, and then I'm doing all the writing on stage, and then pretty much throwing stuff out and moving on and moving on and moving on in a kind of almost the thing that frustrates me is this idea of writing and getting the jokes into a certain form is
Right.
that I mean, no disrespect to anybody who's doing that, and I think that I think whatever works for them. And there are some fantastic writers, and I've just been listening to Mick Kaplan, and it's very tightly written, and it certainly seems like there's a lot of work has gone into it, or maybe he's just riffing it. I don't know. But there's something about wanting to be completely free on stage, unencumbered by the need to do things in a particular way, which is maybe going to be the thing that prevents me from ever getting anywhere. But who knows? I don't know. We're doing this to have fun in the moment, aren't we?
It's and it is all about that. It is all about that in the moment. And I think it's just, and again, I don't think it's necessarily a hard and fast thing because I do think you've got to get all of this is all different levels, isn't it? Like on
Mm,
a music board where you're turning up the bass, turning up this all the
mm, mm, mm.
just think it's like there's a certain amount of some people are going to be outliers and they can do things in ways that nobody can do, right? So there's a few of those
Mm.
people, but they're not really informative because, oh, oh, just be Michael Jordan and away you go. Then you'd be good at basketball.
No.
No, no, sorry, that's implying that. See, I mean, he works insanely hard as well. But um, there's the thing about being free and the thing about being encumbered on stage, and that's where I feel like you are amazing, and that's where I feel like I'm trying to get better at. But then there's also the thing where if for me, I feel like if it's just fully that slider and there's no preparation at all,
Yeah.
that's not going to be as good as having a mixture. And again, those dials I think are different for different people, and
Yeah.
it's all just about playing around with the playing around with caring what the audience think, but not really caring, playing around with
Mm.
it. Like I've prepared some stuff, but I'm loose. I can just come
Yeah,
up with
yeah.
stuff off the dome. And it's just, and again, I do still think the central tenet though is you being able to be like present and on stage. So whatever mixture of those dials gets you to that, then I think that's probably the winning formula from whomever it is.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think it's and that one's going to go through different stages where you're experimenting with those at different levels, and
Yeah.
you're going to change that and evolve that. I guess part of me thinks like there's is there maybe a magic that occurs once you're in a certain number of years, and anyway. I mean, we will see. That is there. Are you listening back to your sets? Are you videoing or
Not
recording
as much
yourself?
as I should be. Not as much as I should be. I normally audio record nearly all of them, and then I video record a few of them. But I really need to start doing the video recording because I'm paying a lot of attention to my tone and my words, but I'm not paying enough attention to my physicality. Which again,
Mm.
I move around a lot stage. I think I'm animated in a way that's quite good. But again, there's it's like everything. There's little stuff that I think I'm probably doing that. And again, okay, so what would the wrong way to approach it, or not the wrong way, but this sort of maybe less optimal way to approach it would be like, oh, I keep clicking my finger when I do that, or I keep moving my hand and
Mm.
that looks stupid. I don't do that anymore. But it's kind of like I think it's good to see like your own physicality so you can see your own anxiety when it comes through. I think
Okay.
for me, looking back at the video, that's what's really useful. You're like, oh, that's why that joke didn't work. I said
Mm.
it. It was the tone was great, the delivery was great, but my body, look at how my body is there. Was so uptight. There was something or
Mm.
something, something like that. So I think that can be very useful. But again, that's you've got to get over that thing where you don't like looking at yourself. So
Indeed, which still,
but you have to.
uh,
You have to. I'm just
as we
avoiding
were
it.
talking to Matt Lowe's last week, and many times on this podcast, we talk about how much that for me that is like it is literally a highlight of every gig is the process of watching myself back and listening to myself back afterwards. It's
It's great.
screaming narcissist, maybe. I don't know. There's just something like, yeah, I love doing it, and part of it is I mean, it's so interesting what you're saying there about, oh, that you could actually reason about whether a joke worked or not based upon your body language or this, that, and the other. Like that sounds entirely possible in principle, although I don't feel like I'm at a level of understanding of body language or joke or that where I could consciously tease out those things. I
Gotcha,
what I
gotcha.
just I end up kind of hoping that the process of watching it back is like it's sort of amplifying the signal that I got in the gig. Like, because I think
Gotcha.
a lot of we're always learning on stage, right? And so you're doing something, and you're in that state, and the laughs that you heard coming back at that point was like was a reinforcement to say, oh, more of that, other stuff, not less of that. And then so it's of course difficult to get stage time. We're all looking for more stage time. I mean, it's interesting talking to Matt Lowe's last week, and he has a similar thing to what you were saying about like finding a balance and not doing too many. I mean, I think what we would all like is for we would like more stage time, not necessarily more gigs, but if you could go out on one night and get an hour's worth of stage time every night, that would be, so I mean, like if you've got, 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then you can watch back the video, that's kind of, you're doubling up on the
Yeah,
kind of opportunities for at least subconsciously, learning what's working and what's not
absolutely.
working.
And you get to see things from the perspective of the audience. So
Right.
there's stuff. I think the fact that you feel I do not feel like this mostly. Although I do sometimes. And when I feel like and when I have this feeling, I think it's a great feeling and a useful feeling.
Oh
I
yeah.
think if you look back at your own work and it really it tickles you and it makes you laugh and you think, I like this guy. I like what this guy's doing. To me, To me, I think that's a good sign. I think that's a really good sign. That because again, I feel like now you could just be a raging narcissist, Sam. I don't know. It's possible. It's possible.
Entirely possible. It's probably
But
true.
I also feel like you've got to like what you're doing, and you've got to like the person who's doing it
Right.
as they're doing it. And if you do that, then that's that authenticity thing as well. I think that's a great sign. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. I mean, it's what's strange for me recently is often I, I somehow, when I'm on stage, I feel less comfortable about what's going on. And then when I watch it later on, I'm like, oh, actually, that was okay.
Right.
There's a kind of, I often feel like, and that's, I get so upset when I fail to record myself, is it such a, like, but it's about, for yourself. I mean, we're treading old ground perhaps from the podcast point of view, but I'm very interested in it. Like, you don't like looking at yourself or the sound of your voice that's been true throughout your life. You just can you tell us?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I think it's, and again, I think this is tied into something around the hiding thing or something
Oh,
around the
okay,
like
okay.
quite authentic enough on stage. And again, by the way, when I say authentic, just to be clear, this is not like just another box I'm trying to tick. I really
Mm,
do feel like no, I'm not trying to be. The point is not okay. The point is, of course, other people because you're connecting to other people.
mm,
But I'm not trying to be authentic for them. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? That's counterproductive.
mm,
You have to feel like you're you. You know what I mean? You have to really feel like you're there and you're present. And and sometimes it's funny. I almost have the opposite feeling to you, Sam. Sometimes when I'm in the gig, I'm on stage and I'm flowing and I'm loving it. And
mm.
then when I look back, I don't like it. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't as funny as I thought. So it's that I don't know. I think that's
Yeah,
but I again, it's all information. It's all
yeah,
information that we can either consciously or subconscious. That's when you were saying about the thing about being so many years in, or a sweet spot, or this thing about I'm not getting as much stage time, but when I look back at the videos, that's part of the process. I think
yeah,
even if you were saying, oh, I don't pick up on body language, I don't pick up on this, but I think subconsciously
yeah,
we
yeah.
really do pick up on that stuff. You know what I mean? Especially if you're halfway good at comedy, which you are. You know what I mean?
Oh, well,
If you weren't good at reading people, you wouldn't. To some extent. To
at
some
some level,
extent.
and it's I love getting the compliments, and there, I think that there's some truth. I think I have not got nothing. Right, there are, like, documented cases of people laughing at some of my antics, particularly the unprepared ones.
We've got proof. We've got hard
I've got
evidence.
I've got a lot of video evidence for this, Your Honor.
It's
They are,
important, though. It's important. Yeah.
um, yes, and I just wanted to add. I think I also have that case of like sometimes when I feel like it's gone very well, and then even within the same thing, there was the bit that I thought, oh, that got loads of laughs. Watching it back on the video, didn't get quite as many as I remembered it, and vice versa. It's a real leveler. But yes, I mean, we're rushing on. I mean, it's so great talking to you. It's so easy and free. I'm going to take us on to some of the other touches on other points, because I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on them. I mean, one of the ones was, that we talk about is about the people having the impact, the people who've had the biggest impact on you and your comedy. I cannot help but make a suggestion of, is it possible that the person who trained you was Jeff Innocent?
No, it's not, but people always think it's him.
Okay, there we go. I've
Because he
fallen into your
recites.
comedy booby trap there. Okay, well, but
Won't
yeah,
find it. You won't find it. People have been trying to get me to come up with this name for years. It's not going to happen.
there we go. Okay, okay.
He's lost. The poor man's lost in the back of my mind. He's great. You were so good. Alehouse comedian. You were a great teacher. And he retired then from comedy. See, that's the thing. He disappeared. So
Right.
I may have made him up.
Yeah, no,
He
no,
may
the
be.
unknown comic. Maybe it was the universe formed, a comedy mentor to help you folks. And I guess we've talked about Gillian Fitz, who, with the podcast, suggested you get started. This unknown comic who, did this good job of getting you on the path, and then I think Chanel, who was carrying on and so on. I mean,
Yeah,
and
big,
you've
sorry,
talked.
big, just, I don't want to interrupt you, but big shout out to Chanel because
Yes.
when she started doing comedy with me, she was such a good comedy buddy. We
Mm,
became really good friends. We're still great friends. We did a little comedy podcast together called Chanel and Alan Chit Chat podcast, which is another one of these pandemic
brilliant.
things we did. Great fun.
Yep.
But she was great. It's so good to have a comedy buddy that you can like who kind of gets, she doesn't have the same sense of humor as me. She's quite a different sense of humor, but off stage, we really get each other and we're really good at giving feedback to each other
Brilliant.
and being pretty honest without being, a dick about the whole thing.
Yes.
So I really, I mean, in many ways, I would say she helped me as much, if not more, than the other people because she was kind of on the journey with me when I was starting off. So
Brilliant.
yeah, she's a great friend of mine, and hilarious as well. I keep trying to get her to go back comedy, but she's like, nah,
Oh,
I'm too
really?
good. No, not too good. You know what I mean?
but
And she's right. She's right. She is.
but she's well, it is it's I think like you and I are both in like comedy is in some way the highest goal. But there are, we have to admit that there are other things. People are allowed to be interested in other things.
Yes,
There,
it is. Listen, if you do want to cure AIDS, it's not what I would do, but fair enough.
yeah, yeah, yeah. God bless you. God bless you. It's good luck with that. It's we'll just like try and cure the drought of sad faces. That's our job. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fantastic. And thanks for shouting out Chanel there. Yeah, I'm slightly frustrated that the people on my comedy course, some of them good friends have not continued. I'd almost say, I'm looking. I think I'm looking for comedy buddies. Really,
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of great comics out of that, and part of the thing I love about doing comedy is all the different people that I'm meeting, and I'm still working on getting to the point of like there's that situation where you've had a great gig or a bad gig and you're trying to wrestle with it psychologically or what have you. Having people that you can reach out to and talk to, or just like a couple of text messages backwards and forwards. It's difficult to know. I'm hopeful that as I go forward I will meet more and more people within comedy where I can do that and I won't feel that I'm imposing on them, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean because since Chanel, although we're still great buddies, since she stopped doing comedy, I haven't quite found somebody who I'm that tight with, who's
Mm,
also doing the thing I'm doing. And I think the thing about comedy is because it's so, yes, we are all doing quote unquote the same thing, but it,
mm,
it attracts such different people. They've
yeah.
so many different reasons for doing it. They have such different opinions about comedy, what works and what doesn't. And that's all valuable. It's all interesting to hear that, but it's good when you have somebody who you can kind of really click with because what I find my what I find is the people who I'm like sometimes the people I click with aren't the people who do the kind of comedy I like or I don't like or they don't like my comedy or
Okay.
not in a negative, not in a
Yeah,
horrible way
yeah.
or just it's a different thing. So I find it hard to find people who really coalesce. One thing that I have started doing a little bit, I think it's probably a good thing to do anyway, although again, you got to be careful with people to be tactful
Sure.
and not overstep your boundaries and so forth. But sometimes what I like to do is when I'm reaching out to comedians, if I think of a tag for a joke or if I think
Yeah.
of a line, again, you've got to judge the personality and be like, oh,
Sure.
hey, I really love this set. And I just thought maybe you could do, and then, nine times out of 10, people have taken it the right way. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
sometimes that helps start a little dialogue,
Yeah.
around that. It's a good exercise as well because, well, of course, listen, hey, if you come up with a good joke that you can use, fucking
Mm.
fuck giving that away. Keep that. I'm not giving you any of those, Sam. Fuck off. Get your own joke. But if you especially if you have something where you're like, oh well, I'm not going to use that tag. I'm not going to, that this person's doing a different thing,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
me. They're a female, in a wheelchair. This joke's not going to work for me, whatever it is.
Yes.
It's still a useful exercise to write jokes, even if they're not for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. And then that's part of my process at the moment is I want to get my brain into the state of, and I think was it, oh God, Chappelle, hey man, who said, he speaks comedy. Like I think uh, part of my pro is I want to get so fluent in comedy that like in the way that I'm fluent in English, arguably. I mean, I speak Japanese and I have some level of fluency in that, even
Cool.
and then French, not so much. But like, I kind of want to get so fluent in comedy that I can speak it like a native. Um,
Gotcha.
and I think, yeah. So part of the idea behind the 10 jokes a day and the different things is it's almost like, I mean, I'm kind of almost trying to take a leaf out of Eminem's book. Is I think like I've
Nice.
heard this. He's always writing rhymes, right? But
Right. Gotcha.
he's not trying to remember a specific set of rhymes. He's just
Yeah.
getting his brain into the state where he's always writing rhymes. And so I'm kind of like trying to get my brain into the state where it's always, always, always doing comedy so that it can kind of become like a fluency so that it's all anyway. I mean, of course, I remember my friend saying how irritating it is when I do. You got to balance how much
Yeah, we all have that problem.
you let that out on people. Fantastic. Brilliant. And so let's move towards our last few questions, which is drugs, which as I always say, drugs. People say, oh well, you mean illegal drugs? No, I mean any substances. Caffeine, ADHD medication, potatoes, whatever it happens to be. Like, are
That
there
was
substances?
racist that you said that, by the way, Sam.
I
By the
was
way, I think I didn't notice that now. Don't think you just.
just after I said it, I felt, oh no, I have misstepped here. It's entire. But
I'll be
I am
listening back to the other podcast now to see what you say to the other people, depending on their background.
yeah, no, well, it did so. I mean, I was busy there trying to think of, because I've mentioned ADHD medication and caffeine before, and I was going to go, and like the last time it came out was heroin, but I thought I'd go for something different. I did eat potato salad. I'm a huge fan of it. My wife is Japanese, and she's always making fun of like because she's like rice, and then she's like you or potatoes. And I'm like, well, no, I'm an equal opportunity carbohydrates. What I want is variety. I love rice, I love pasta, I love potatoes, I love what's the other thing, bread. All these things. I just want. Well, I'm a bit of a stickler as well for like I don't want to eat the same carbohydrate 2 meals in a row. That's something to know about me.
Okay.
But anyway, sorry, big tangent there. So yeah, are there substances that affect your perception of reality or how things are working, or
Yes.
not so much?
Definitely, definitely. So I was an alcoholic for about from the age of I would say 18 through to till I was when did I stop drinking? It was about 8 years ago now.
Oh,
When I was
really?
30 something anyway. I'm not great at math. But yeah, so I was boozing the whole time. And when I went over to China doing Tefling and it was great, but Jesus, we only had to work a few days a week and then we were just on the lash for the rest of the time.
Really? Okay.
Drinking it. It was great fun. And I was a great drunk 9 times out of 10. And then one
Right.
time out of 10, I would become an absolute nightmare,
Oh dear.
And
Yeah.
and again, it's all connected back to that thing of insecurity. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I couldn't be around people, socializing with them, interacting with them. I was too
Mm,
anxious. But when I
mm,
had the booze in me, that went
mm.
away. It turned that off. It was, self-medicating is what it was. And
Yep.
then I was just had the most fun. But I'm a very person of extremes. I just keep going, then going, going, going. So I quit after a long time. And again,
Mm,
sorry, just to be clear, there's I was a functional alcoholic. I was
mm.
doing my job, I was going to work, I was everybody, was like Alan's great at everyone
Yep.
liked me
Yep.
and blah blah
Yep.
blah. But and which is funny because I remember when I messaged some people about it, I said I decided I was going to quit drinking. I woke up one day and I'd been fucking going hard on the booze the night before, and I woke up one day and I was like, I'm gonna fucking die if I keep doing this. I
Mm.
realized I remembered it distinctly. I woke up and I was like, I've got to decide now if I'm gonna kill myself doing this or if I'm gonna stop.
Right.
And I
Right.
decided to stop, and I did stop. Now that's the successful story. I'm pretty sure I had that thought about every year for the previous 10
Sure.
years. But anyway, this time I
Sure.
stopped. Yeah, so I went to Alternative and I messaged people saying, listen, I've decided, I realized I have this problem. I'm going to stop. It might
Mm.
surprise you that I have this problem because most of my problematic drinking was by myself, actually. You
Oh,
know what I
really?
mean? A lot of it was away from other people. And
Got
I,
you.
and so I was like, you might be surprised to hear it, but that's what it is. And I
Sure.
said, the only thing you need to do now, you don't need to tell me out, you can send me a message or something. I was like, you don't need to do anything. The fact that I've told a bunch of people who were very close to me and my friends around me, I was like, all you have to do now is know that. Because now I know that you know that if I start drinking again, that I've got your perception on me and
Sure.
that will help regulate
Yeah.
me.
Got you.
And I initially needed that, but now I'm past the point where I want to drink, not past the point where I want to do other substances. No, you're not getting that success story. But the alcohol for me was quite specific in terms of this social anxiety thing.
Got
So
you.
I do other drugs now. I smoke weed fairly regularly
Hmm.
by myself to relax myself, and sometimes creativity or whatever, a little
Sure.
bit. And I've recently started getting into magic mushrooms,
Okay.
which I think are great. Oh, sorry. All the caveats. Some people have psychological issues.
Yeah,
They
you've got to
should
be
not be
careful with these
taking
substances. Yeah.
hallucinogenics. You shouldn't be like, oh, I'll take, the classic thing. I'll just take, oh, this didn't work after 4 seconds. Let me take 10 more. Don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Start off gradually and all that stuff. But um, the experiences I have had doing the magic mushrooms. You can see my colored lights I have here. I have
Mm,
incense, I have candles, getting a nice setting, a nice
mm,
zone. And I find that it really puts me into a very calm, introspective, but also for
mm.
whatever reason, not judgmental, not self-judgmental zone. So I
Right.
get lots of the benefit of what I was getting arguably from alcohol, which was the turning off that self-judgment that then
Right.
self-judgment essentially is acted out through the judgment of others. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
It's all mixed in together. So that I find lots of the time, not always, you can have a bad trip, but normally with magic mushrooms, that sort of turns that stuff off for me. And then
Mm.
that really allows me to kind of think and reflect about my life in a way that's less self-critical. I find
Sure.
it's been the biggest thing that's useful for me. So, substances, it's a complicated thing,
Yeah.
I would never tell anybody else how they should trade. I have no problem going to the pub. People can be drinking all night around me.
Right.
Doesn't bother me at all anymore because
Mm.
I finally realized that, because of the other maybe work I've done on myself, stuff like doing comedy, maybe
Mm.
stuff like psychedelics and so forth, that's helped me get over a lot of the social anxiety that I had. So now I realize, oh, I'm just as much fun. No,
Right. Right.
it's like everything. When people are totally fucked up, I mean, then eventually it just becomes sort of dull, doesn't it? But
Yes. Yes.
but it doesn't affect me in that way anymore. In terms of sort of wanting to have a drink or whatever, that's just totally turned off. But it's turned off because the social anxiety thing I've worked on a lot in myself,
Yeah.
because that was the problem. Booze isn't the problem. You know what I
Right.
mean? I know a million people who should be drinking more. They should be drinking fucking more. Jesus Christ, loosen up. Fucking hell. No, you know what I mean. But it's
Sure.
not. What I'm saying is, it's not a hard and fast thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I very much relate to the social anxiety thing in that I can certainly, well, and I've always been sort of like well, actually since 17, I've been an outgoing extroverted sort of person. I can very clearly remember different stages, um, like I think it was probably in like 20 in the pub with my sister and some her friends and so on, and us all, getting there and the first 15 minutes being like a little bit awkward and people not knowing who to say and whatever, and then and I remember that unpleasant sensation, and then as we start drinking, that breaks the ice, and it kind of goes, and I think absolutely lots and lots of us using the alcohol to manage that social anxiety. It's
And again, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing at all. You know what I mean?
right
In moderation, a
in
little bit of
moderation.
that,
Yeah,
it helps take you. And again, moderation might be different things for different people as well, to be
sure,
clear. But so again, I was sort of being facetious before. A half glass of wine might be the perfect amount for some people, or
sure,
3 pints, whatever it is. But again, I'm not against people having that as a social lubricant and helping them to get over their anxieties. But it's if you become dependent, if you are incapable of having interactions with people without a substance, that's probably a sign that you need to look at that.
yeah, absolutely. And then it's fascinating that some people do seem to be able to have these things in moderation, and that always was my problem with alcohol, and I haven't
Oh,
drunk anything for over 3 years now. Is that I would have some, and then I would just want to have more and more and more and more. And it's, I think, easier for me to manage by if that's what I found the last 3 years. If I have a rule that I just don't even start, then
yeah.
I'm in a similar place, I think, to you though, that I don't need it and I'm not bothered. And actually, I've discovered that most pubs they will serve you soda water, or is it like just fizzy water in a pint glass for free. I mean, some places they charge. And I've realized that all along, what I really liked was the bubbles.
Great. That's
Could have
great.
saved so much money and embarrassing situations. Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Well, and let's. Interesting that you touched on the mushrooms. I think that there's a really interesting space that they can help you get into. Caveats, of course, with these are psychoactive substances. People have to be extremely careful with these things. But what does it all mean, dude? Life, the universe, and everything. Where are you in your spiritual journey of understanding what we're doing here?
Yeah. I don't know really, to be honest, Sam, because I've been yeah, I've been thinking about them my whole life, really, to be honest with you. Since I was since I was a kid. And maybe we all are, maybe we all are. But I don't know what it's about. I'm sort of trying to find out, and I think that's for better and worse. I think that's why I've traveled a lot. I think that's
Mm,
why I'm doing stand-up comedy. I think that's why done these, psychedelics and so forth, is because, yeah, I'm trying to work out what it is. I'm trying to work out two questions really.
Oh yeah.
One is sort of like, what's going on with me? Like, what do I want? I still don't really know the answer to that question, if I'm being totally honest. I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't really know what I want out of life, which is
Hmm.
kind of other than I to me personally, and maybe this is just my own psychological makeup, my background, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. I just think of there's so much to experience in the world, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
There's such a big world out there, and I don't just mean geography. You can do what I like to do and travel a bunch of places. That's great. That's a great way of getting out in there.
Hmm.
But you can
Hmm.
also travel internally. You can
Yeah.
travel with books. You can travel with meet people. People
Yeah.
are, when this great thing about comedy, meeting all these interesting people from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
It's such a great way of exploring and
Hmm.
experiencing our own existence. And for me, what I know what I don't want, which is just to be in the same place with the same people, doing the same thing, having the same fucking problems, not growing,
Yeah.
not learning, living a myopic, small life. Now, again, if you're in a little village and you like that little village and you are experiencing your life and enjoying it, that's not what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. You know what I mean? That's great.
Yeah.
That can look that way for you. But I did just, I always felt sort of stuck and constrained, I think, as
Sure.
as a child a lot. And I was living in the country, I was living in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. So I
Hmm.
always wanted to get
Hmm.
out, get out, get out. But it's a deeper thing. It's not just get out of, like, my little town. It's to get out and experience the world, because I think that would be the most tragic life of all, just not to feel like you've experienced not everything, but
Hmm.
a lot of things. A lot of the things that you're there's two sides of the house. The world is an amazing place, and
Hmm.
people are
Hmm.
amazing. They really are. As soon as you think you know it, then
Hmm.
suddenly you realize you don't know fucking at 25th of it, a millionth of it. There's so many interesting experiences out there to have, and ways to live, and thoughts that people have. So it's a never-ending journey in that way. And yeah, I want to make sure that I don't waste my time, but
Yeah.
I still don't know, Sam. I still don't really know what I want, you know?
No, no, it's a tricky one. I mean, I think I'm honing in on, I want to be able to have, a relationship with, like maybe 50 people every night
Hmm.
who would come. But if I could work out some setup where I was basically able to perform stand up in person, ideally, to
Yeah.
like, a different group of 50 people every night, well, with some repeats, shall we say, that would just be, you know,
Never come back again. Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting one. Was we actually, we have regulars who come back now to Sunset Comedy, who I have an ongoing dialogue with. I'm actually similarly in the virtual reality as well, and that's an interesting side of things when that all sorts of interesting things going on. I mean, again, it all comes back to you know finding your voice, finding your audience, finding that place. But yeah, I love what you're saying. I mean, I think that there is so much to explore. I mean, as I say, all power to the people who, if some people have worked out that this, that the life that they have in one village, and that's one experience, and that is working for them. Absolutely not. I think, for you and I mean, I think we've run out of time you'll have to be back on to talk about your experiences abroad. I've also really enjoyed traveling, but yes, what does it all mean? I mean, I think the thing, as I mentioned recently on some of the podcasts, is, I mean, I find I'm listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle recently, which is all this like power of now and its presence and being in the moment and this, that, and the other. And I can start. If I'm deluding myself, I can start to feel a kind of universal consciousness, maybe. Or is it just, like indigestion? I'm not sure. Like there's something coming through, but I can also feel my ego fighting with it, because I do have this,
Wow.
I would, oh, I can feel, like I was reviewing a video for another comedian the other day who's going to be on one of my shows, and she has done really well, and she, like was doing the comedy store, and I'm just like, oh, I want that so much. I want, I mean, I would. They said, like Jim Carrey's famous quote of, like, I wish everybody could become rich and famous and realize that it's not, it doesn't fix them, it doesn't, whatever. Okay, yeah, but I still want to try it. I want to try,
Let me
world
find out for
famous.
myself, Jim. Let me find out for myself.
Yeah, look, let's trade places. You give me all of your money and make a film with me as the main character in this. So yeah, but I feel like more sensibly there's something about. I mean, again, to take it back to what you were saying about you know I think comedy is almost a it's a spiritual path. Like it's about finding that place where you can really truly be in the moment, in the face of whatever. Whoever's in the audience, whatever they're doing, if you can find that sort of calm at the eye of the storm, then that's yeah, and that really seems to be for me the big goal. But all power to all of us, everybody exploring, their own path.
No, I think it's great. I think that's a really nice way of summing it up. Yeah, that's excellent.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure. We've gone. This is probably the longest one that I've
Oh
done.
shit,
It's been
sorry.
great talking with you. It's been great fun. Uh, for the listeners, if they want to see more of you, how can they find you? Where can they get to you?
So I am on at Alan J AlanJayByrne, Alan J Byrne at Alan J Byrne for Instagram. That's where I put most of my comedy stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff up there, like all of us. I'm like, I need to do more social media. And if you want to see me perform, the next time I'm performing, I think is May 15th because I'm a bit busy for the next couple of weeks, and I'm doing support for my friend James Woods, aka Moss, aka Dick Speed,
Ooh,
who is a washed up northern game show host who's trying to get his career back together with his new show, Death Jenga. Now, that's his
wow,
character, just to be clear. That's not
brilliant,
actually who Jenga, but that's his character. So I'm going to be doing support for him on the 15th. And that is, you can find details about that on the Your Friend and Mine Instagram. And yes, because that comedy night is sort of hosting this work in progress with
brilliant,
doing a little bit of support. And yeah, definitely check out Moss as well. You can find or Dick Speed. You can find his link through that as well
great,
because he is also a hilarious character comedian who I used to run a comedy night with, and we're still really really great friends.
brilliant, brilliant. We'll get it all in the show notes, and I think you're going to be in a little gig in Harrow on Tuesday. Is that possible?
Oh, oh shit! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Of course, I was assuming you already knew that, but of course, the listeners do not know that. Yes, I will in fact be at Sam's fantastic gig at Harrow at the Junction this Tuesday coming up.
Yeah,
And
so
if
it's
I'm not just listen, of course, I would just say this because I'm not a lunatic. I'd say Sam had the best night ever, even if he didn't have the best night ever. But
sure.
it's genuinely it's a really really fun night. I haven't met anybody who said anything bad about it. And let me tell you, comedians will find a way to bitch and moan fucking anything. So it's a really wonderful fun night, and I'm looking forward to it big time.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, looking forward to having you
But
there.
of
And so,
course, the audience has no way of knowing if I'm lying or not. But they're just gonna have to take my word from
well,
it. In this
they're
case,
just they're gonna have to come and see it for themselves. Yeah, Sunset Comedy. We'll get the links in the show note for that. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing you there on Tuesday. And well, it's going to be last word to our guest Alan J. Byrne in a moment. But let's, first off, let's thanks everyone. Thanks everyone. Let's thank everyone, and indeed thank Alan for his time. And remember, you can help support comedians on technology, people, and drugs by going to patreon.com/comedians on, where any level of support will help us continue to produce this show. So please do also follow us on Facebook, and we'll see you again soon. Last word to our guest, Alan J. Byrne.
yeah, I think my last word is, it, there's so many places to put our energy into, and I think really the best place to start is like connecting with yourself, exploring yourself, and learning to love yourself. And I think if you start off with that, if you have that in mind, a lot of the other stuff that you want will come to you.